And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 65th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for Indiana University sports to as many fans across a multitude of modern platforms as possible. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, December 4th, where I am your host, Noah Freeman. And here with me tonight is my usual co-host, Matthew Lukens, as well as Nathan Krishnan, one of our Indiana contributors, and who was also on the podcast with me a couple weeks ago. If you would like to see us live and participate in the ongoing chat, catch us Tuesday evenings at 8:30 p.m. on our YouTube page or our website. If you miss us for the live broadcast, you can subscribe to our show for free on whatever platform you listen to podcasts, so you can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at The Hoosier Sound and subscribe. All of the information is in our website, thehoosiersound.com, as well as our partner, Indiana HQ at indianahq.com. Lastly, I would like to remind you about a new feature us at Indiana HQ just launched. You now have the option to join our mailing list. We will send you our IU sports news roundups once a week on Sundays, where you can get our analysis of Indiana sports. Just head over to our website, thehoosiersound.com, to get our IU sports email once a week. We can't wait to connect with you there. All right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. But first, Matt, what is your memorable monologue for this week in IU sports?
Well, I think the only thing it could possibly be this week has to be that the inside-out recruiting strategy that Archie Miller is using is working, and it's working really well. Don't know what I'm talking about. Let me catch you up. It was last Friday afternoon, randomly, kind of randomly. Trayce Jackson-Davis, five-star power center from Center Grove, Indiana, committed to our Hoosiers. He was obviously a big target for IU since he's from Center Grove. No, he's 45 minutes north of Bloomington. But he's also the son of Dale Davis, a former Pacer, and he's had like an astronomical rise through the recruiting rankings the last 2 years, and now he's probably going to be McDonald's All-American. He's a gold medalist with the USA Olympic team this summer, the U.S. men's national team this summer for basketball. He's 6'8". He can really score, put the ball on the floor. He's got a three-pointer that's coming in to fruition. I don't know how well that he will do that in college, but he's at least trying in high school. So that's nice. But more importantly, he's also friends with another five-star recruit, like best friends with our five-star recruit, Keon Brooks, who's from Fort Wayne, Indiana, goes to La Lumiere and LaPorte. He's a five-star small forward / power forward. So if we can get both of those guys and lock up two of the top three players in the state, that's just going to broaden the message to the rest of the country that Indiana's locked down for Indiana, and we're going to get our recruits and keep them here and play for the state's premier program.
Yep. So obviously, Matt just prefaced a good portion of this topic, so we're going to get into that later. Before I give my thoughts or something, Nathan, do you got something, or do you want to move on?
No, I just, first of all, like to introduce myself to everyone. This is my second time on the podcast, and I'm glad that I could, represent Indiana HQ and also, talk about whatever, it's basketball, right? Basketball's front and center on our minds, both current season basketball and basketball recruiting. So in terms of Trayce Jackson-Davis, I think it's, in summary, it is a big win for Archie Miller in the state. Like you said, we'll go into detail down the road, but just it's always nice to see Indiana guys play basketball at Indiana University.
Exactly. And I also don't want to take anything away. First, of course, Trayce is huge, and we're going to talk mostly about basketball on this show, but being in talking about all IU sports, at least briefly in some respect, I don't want to forget about this IU men's soccer team, who, of course, won again this past weekend. They won basically the Elite Eight version for the NCAA men's soccer tournament. They're going to Santa Barbara this weekend, so they're going to play Maryland, again, the third time this year, they're going to play Maryland, Santa Barbara, 10:30 p.m. on Friday. And yeah, it's going to be great. Final four. If they win, they get to play Sunday against the in the championship. So they're going to see if they can go back to the championship for a second year in a row. Stanford and Wake Forest are out on the other side, which would have been the bugaboos for the Hoosier men's soccer team. So we wish them luck. Definitely watch. I know it's going to be a late game on Friday, but definitely watch them. And also, I just want to kind of promote our own episode last week. If you didn't get to check it out, Matt and I got to hop on the episode with Freddie McSwain Jr. So definitely check that out if you haven't gotten to yet. But of course, as we've talked about a lot already, this past Friday, Trayce Jackson-Davis, again, just announced and signed his letter of intent to become a Hoosier next year in the class of 2019 for the second recruit for Archie in the class of 2019. Just a little more on Trayce. He's a 6'9", 232-pound forward from Center Grove. He is ranked 18th in Rivals.com, 17th on ESPN, 15th on 24/7 Sports Composite, and 14th on USA Today's Chosen 25 in the class of 2019. What does this mean for IU recruiting-wise? Matt, let's start with you. What do you think this means for IU recruiting-wise going forward?
I think this now becomes like a trend, definitely. Just because once other recruits start to see what other recruits do, they kind of like to follow. So, at one time, surprisingly, Duke wasn't a big destination for five-star recruits. In fact, Duke was, almost like a Villanova where they loved getting their 4-year guys that came in, and they were a low 4-star, maybe high 4-star recruits that stayed for 2 to 3 years and went into the NBA.
Coach K was adamantly against the one and done at one point.
Correct. And then he started recruiting some 5-stars, and then that 2014 team with all the 5-stars that made it to the championship game. And then that became a cycle. And so now you look at the team that Duke has, and they have obviously Zion and the rest of the crew out there.
And don't remind me, Matt. I was over that one. Sorry. I was over that game.
I mentioned something on Reddit today about how, that it was like complain about your team thread. And so somebody from Purdue was like, we've played such a hard schedule. And then I responded with, well, at least you didn't have to play in Cameron Indoor. So get the crap beaten out of you. Anyways, but that's besides the fact. So recruits notice what other recruits do. So obviously Romeo, once Louisville was out of the mix, was almost, we were pretty certain he was coming to IU. He comes to IU. Trayce is really good friends with Romeo. Trayce follows Romeo, and then hopefully Keon follows Trayce. That's 3 5-stars in the last 2 years, all 3 from the state of Indiana. I think that just basically locks down the state's borders for the foreseeable future. Of course, the class coming up, we're actually going to have to go nationally if you want to get a 5-star, because there are no 5-stars from the state of Indiana in the 2020 class. The best recruit in the state of Indiana is Anthony Leal. He plays at one of the Bloomington high schools. It slips my mind. I don't want to say north and it's south, and then say south and it's north. So he plays for one of the Bloomington high schools. He's a 3-point shooter by nature. He's a shooting guard. We haven't offered him yet, so I'd be interested to see if he gets an offer. But other than that, we've also been looking around a lot of very prominent AAU teams. So we've offered a lot of people from team, Juwan Morgan's AAU team, and I think Victor Oladipo's AAU team. We've offered some people in both this class and the next class. So I'm very interested to see what happens, of course. And I don't think we'll be done if we get Keon this time around. Because I think Archie will try to get one more commit. Transfers happen, and we'll see. And I was going to mention Clifton Moore's name in the transfer thing, but we watch this game tonight, and I'm like, well, maybe he has a future here at IU. Who knows? And I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a hot second.
Yeah, exactly. Nathan, what about you? What does this mean for IU recruiting wise?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's pretty obvious. Trayce Jackson-Davis, big time player, top 20 recruit, as you mentioned, both on ESPN and Rivals. It's big. But it's funny, I thought, Matt, you covered it really well, but I'm sitting here over the weekend and the last couple of days, and I'm starting to ask, like, is it almost more important that he's a 5-star guy, or is it more important that he's from Indiana? And obviously, if you can get both, it's a perfect scenario. But there have been a fair share of really solid basketball players in the state the last couple of years. I don't know. The first one that came to my mind, that sort of popped into my mind the last few days, is Bryant McIntosh, who played at Northwestern for up until last season. You don't necessarily have to be a 5-star player to be an impact contributor at the college level. And while it is absolutely cool and it's fun and it's influential, and obviously with Trayce Jackson-Davis having a close relationship to Keon Brooks, that's a big help. But I've always kind of wondered, if you forced Archie Miller to just recruit the state of Indiana, I think he could possibly still put together an NCAA tournament level team. So, instead of having those guys go to Northwestern or go to UCLA like Chris Wilkes did, and I know Chris Wilkes I think he was a 5-star as well, but instead of having those guys go to Michigan State, Northwestern, it's great that he's a car ride away, and he's a big time prospect. Especially if with it being Jawan Morgan's senior year, that's a position we're going to have to fill. So all systems go for Trayce Jackson-Davis. I love it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the part about whether it's probably more important about 5-star or in-state, and I'd have to answer, I think right now maybe 5-star, and I think I might get a lot of backlash for this, but I think if Archie can continue to recruit inside the state of Indiana, I think that's going to be more important, just because we've seen, back to even Mike Davis than to Tom Crean, they both were like, oh, I'm definitely going to lock down the borders of Indiana, and they started to, and then they just let up from it. But before they started to go into pipelines into like Florida and New York and West and just everywhere, they started to go away from the recruiting of Indiana, and there's no reason to believe that Archie won't continue that. I just mean, I guess now we'll have to wait and see if he can keep recruiting within the state of Indiana. And like Matt said, with the class of 2020, that's definitely not going to be a class to keep hanging your hat on, keeping those in-state recruits, just because there's not that really high talent recruit. So we'll have to start waiting until 2021 and 2022, which as of now could have some really big recruits again. But that's a topic for another discussion as I stumble over myself again. It's been a very long day, but what's up, Matt?
I'll give you another player from the state of Indiana that's playing right now that wanted to go to IU and didn't because Tom Crean never offered him. His name's Kyle Guy. Can you imagine Kyle Guy on this team with Romeo? Like, it's so annoying that Tom Crean wouldn't offer the in-state guys, and then they go off and they do big things. Kamar Baldwin and Butler. His face for Xavier last year. I can't remember his name, but there's a bunch of very prominent impact Indiana people playing for other schools when they should have really been staying at home and playing for IU.
Yep. So let's go into what this means for IU next year talent-wise. So, of course, let's assume, I guess, that Romeo is going to be gone. Jawan and Zach are obviously going to be gone. So let's at least keep it at those three, because those are more of the obvious ones. And, of course, Jawan and Zach have to go. At least for Romeo, we're assuming that he's probably going to go. But what does this mean for IU next year talent-wise? What does Trayce specifically bring to the table? How can he contribute to this team, and what is he going to specifically do? Why don't we start with Nathan and then we'll go over to Matt?
Yeah, no, that's a very fair question, and I know there are a lot of IU fans out there that'll probably be like, let's just focus on this season. Obviously, we're just coming off a couple Big Ten wins, but it's always fun to project and look to the future. To me personally, I mean, I'm almost just thinking at it from a very high level. Trayce Jackson-Davis is an athletic 6'9" or so big man. Well, we're seeing a couple of them graduate after the season. Juwan Morgan, Evan Fitzner as well after he finishes this year as a grad transfer. So, look, it's very possible that Trayce Jackson-Davis next year is expected to come in, start at the 5, and play 30 minutes a game, notwithstanding foul trouble. And we'll see if he's going to be able to handle sort of a Big Ten workload. But I think from a specific roster standpoint, you're seeing Morgan and Fitzner go out. You're going to see Trayce Jackson-Davis come in.
Yeah, I like what you said about maybe starting at the center. We'll have to see how Duran develops over this entire year, because if he keeps, if he progresses like we all hope, you would assume he'd start technically at the 5. But let's say Duran doesn't start at the 5, at least recently with centers. I liked your point about him coming in and starting at the center, because 10 years ago, a 6'9" guy, he's more lanky compared to other bigger guys and more centers. 10 years ago, he would definitely not be a center. He would be more of a 4, sorry. He'd be almost a 4 and almost even a 3 just because of his size. But the game is going away from it's going positionless. So I like you're starting at the quote unquote 5, even though he's not technically going to be playing that traditional role. What about you, Matt? What does he specifically bring? What do you see from Trayce Jackson? What is his talent? What are his skills? All of that kind of stuff.
Obviously, he's a big talent. You're not 16th in the nation, almost consensusly, if you're not a big talent. I think we've touched on that. He's athletic, he's a big guy, whatnot. I think some of the underrated part of his game is definitely he's a creator from the center position. He's a very good passer. He makes very good decisions with the ball. He can dribble the ball a little bit. He has a handle. And so those two things, he kind of reminds me a little bit of a little bit more athletic, younger Juwan Morgan, and a sense of that he's going to take the ball, he's going to get the ball with a post, and he's going to make a really good play with it. He's going to try to make the best play he possibly can. And he's not going to go try to find his bucket. He's not going to go and try to, bully a guy down in the post. If he can't bully that guy down in the post, he's going to try to spin around and get a hook shot. He's going to try to spin around and get a jump shot. If he can't do that, he's going to try to pass out of it, try to get one of his players maybe on a cut. He makes really good basketball decisions. And I think that's just par for the course with players from Indiana. And I think that's why you see them go on to have such great college careers almost everywhere they go. Because when you grow up in Indiana, you grow up like loving the sport and getting to know the ins and outs of, what's a cut, what's a screen. Like when you're in 5th grade, 4th grade, like you get to learn all this stuff. I know you go to the rec center here at IU, you got people running pretty good offense for people who have absolute no athleticism. It's in the DNA of this state. And so
I can attest to that.
Yeah. It's pretty much consensus for everybody here at IU, and just Indiana in general. All the Indiana schools, basketball is a religion here, and everybody grows up, watching it, playing it, breathing it, and it shows in the recruits that you get from the state of Indiana, and that's why it's so important. When you look back in the history of IU, some of the most important players and the best players that have played at Indiana are from this state. They grow up and they embrace that culture that is Indiana basketball.
And speaking of a lot of the talent and stuff, specifically about Trayce, I'm going to kind of disperse our Twitter questions throughout the show, because now's a good time to ask the next one. Which, by the way, you don't have to necessarily ask a question on Twitter. You can email us. You can join our email list, so then you have all those emails that you get there right there, and you can just reply to us, or you can just email at admin@indianahq.com if you want to send it a question. But Rob on Twitter asked the best player comparison, either NBA or college, for Trayce Jackson-Davis. So Matt looks like he's itching to say one. Matt, who's the best player comparison?
Oh, that's tough. I said a little bit like Juwan. But if I had to put my money on it, It's like a little bit more athletic Caleb Wesson from Ohio State. Or like take your like what you see in your mind as a Villanova big guy, and that's what Trayce Jackson-Davis is. He's a little bit undersized, but he's extremely athletic, and he's got length, and he can challenge at the rim, and he's a decent shooter. That's Trayce Jackson-Davis.
What about you, Nathan?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't even like this game. I mean, we try to put, a lot of these times it's like putting square pegs in round holes. But for the sake of the game, Matt mentioned a couple of college guys. I'll mention a couple NBA guys that Jackson-Davis kind of reminds me of, and it's a sort of a weird combo. So I see some Domantas Sabonis in him. The Pacers forward. Sabonis is, I believe, a much better shooter than Jackson-Davis is, but just in terms of their style of play. But a little bbit older than Sabonis, I see a little bit of Lamar Odom in him as well. Again, it's a little bit easy to sort of make the lefty comparison because all those three players are left-handed. But as far as Matt mentioned, and some of the online scouting reports mentioned, he can put it on the floor. He's athletic. He can dunk. He can protect the rim. He can set up his teammates a little bit. So I see a little bit of combo of those two guys. I'm not saying Jackson-Davis is those two guys, but just as a high-level comparison, I could kind of see that.
Of course, and of course, I didn't bring this up. You can blame Rob for this question.
I'll let him know.
Exactly. And in what Matt mentioned earlier, how Trayce is starting to at least try and work on a shot. Of course, that's in high school, and we'll see what Archie wants to do with him next year. And then just if he's good enough to go to the NBA the year after that, or if he stays, or whatever his course is the next few years. If he does actually develop a jump shot, then you're right. It starts to fit into Sabonis a little bit. So I like that. But let's move on to let's go to Matt first, real quick.
I got one more. And it's fitting because he's from the state of Indiana. He was recruited a couple of years ago, and now he's in the NBA. I'll give you a Trey Lyles. How about that? Kind of reminds me of Lyles. There we go. That's it.
Okay. But let's move on to the Northwestern game, and we don't have to talk about this much. It was not the best of games, not the most glorified of games. But we'll start with you, Matt. How did you feel about that game that probably shouldn't have been as close as it was?
I don't like that attitude that it shouldn't have been close as it was. Sure, it was a home game, but Northwestern's a very good team. Like, I love Vic Law as a player. He's a great player. He's a great college player. And I knew that what's his name? Parton. Is it Parton? Pardon? Yeah, I knew that Parton was going to give us trouble just because he's a big guy, and our big guys are all either hurt, banged up, or in foul trouble all the time. Hurt and banged up are the same thing, and I just said them twice, but English is hard. Look, it was going to be a hard game. It was going to be a difficult game. A win is a win, and we're going to hear that a couple times tonight. But after the win, 1-0 in the conference. So, that's all you can ask for, really. Excuse me.
Yeah. What about you, Nathan? What were your overall thoughts right after the game? Sing
it to the choir, Matt. A win is a win. I'm not complaining. Not that I'm saying anyone was complaining, but it was a funny game. I guess it would be a completely fair attitude to have by IU fans. Like, throughout that entire game, it felt like we should be up 4 when we were up by 2, or we should have been up 8 when we were up by 4. Or we should have been in the lead when we were trailing. But then everything kind of changed with about 3 minutes to go, when Juwan Morgan, during a timeout, sort of walked off the court in pain. And at that point, at least personally, I was just thinking, find a way to get to the finish line. And IU did. They were struggling inside against Derek Pardon. They were struggling a bit against Vic Law. It wasn't easy. And any given Saturday in the Big Ten, any team can beat any other team. But the fact that IU was able to stick together, find a way to win that game after your star player in that game. And it was funny. Indiana HQ, we released a Twitter poll at halftime, and it was a question of, hey, who's the player of the game at halftime? And it was overwhelmingly in support of Juwan Morgan. And I completely agreed with that. Morgan was dominating Northwestern, at least offensively. And had he been available down the stretch, the offense would have flowed through him. But he wasn't. He walked off. He was hurt. He was unavailable. And IU found a way. So they found a way against Northwestern. It'll be interesting to see how the Wildcats do the rest of the year, because I'm not convinced they're a good team. I'm not convinced they're a bad team. I'm not sure. They're taking on Michigan right now as we're recording this. We'll see how that game ends up. It'll be interesting to see how Northwestern and Penn State and IU and everyone in this conference sort of shakes out by the time March rolls around.
And you mentioned Juwan especially for it, and I think a lot of people could agree that he was, if we were to give player of the game or something like that, it would go to Juwan, because even after he got taken out of 2 or 3 minutes left in the game, he still played for 36 minutes. So he would have played basically the entire game for that. And that's what a senior has to do in a game that's close down the entire time. But then you mentioned when he went out, I think it was really telling of this team. And I'm about to ask you guys a couple of positive and a negative to take away from this game. But I think, at least for me, a positive was that Juwan goes out. Your scorer, your leader. Well, I mean, Romeo's a scorer, but Juwan's really the guy that you go to that kind of runs this offense inadvertently. It kind of runs in and out of him. If Juwan is stepping up, putting some shots up, banging down low, then our offense is doing well. If he's not, then it's really not. But Juwan goes out, so how are you going to get points? The possession right after he goes out, Romeo makes a nice play. He gets a nice couple shots, and Romeo's the one that basically steps up as a freshman to close out the game and to finish that when we didn't have a senior leader. So it was really nice to see a freshman take more of a junior and senior type of role, not just physically, but also mentally. And he didn't really make a lot of key mistakes. He just basically took over. So with that said, what can we, because I know a lot of us have probably heard a lot of analysis about this game and we're more interested in the game that just happened, but real quick, we'll go Nathan, then Matt. What is one positive you want to take away from that last game? And then what's about some negative that the Hoosiers still need to work on going forward?
Yeah, my positive, and I'll keep this succinct. My positive is a little bit in depth. So I've noticed now, whether it was Marcus Howard on Marquette or Ryan Taylor on Northwestern, that IU has done a pretty good job guarding these sniper kind of players, these gunslinging kind of players. It's the cool thing to do nowadays. It's the Steph Curry kind of player, and none of these guys are even close to Steph Curry. But Ryan Taylor, a guy who was a grad transfer from Evansville, he came to Northwestern. He was pretty highly touted coming into the game. He really struggled from start to finish, and IU threw a bunch of different looks at him. He finished 1 for 5 from 3. Marcus Howard from Marquette a few weeks ago struggled as well. And look, there are a lot of other examples of this kind of player in the Big Ten. The first one that comes to my mind is Carson Edwards at Purdue. So if IU can consistently show they can stop this kind of player, that'll be a good sign. From a negative standpoint, the free throw shooting still bothers me. Now, the good news is that IU fixed that to a major extent against Penn State tonight, and we'll see how it trends over time. But against Northwestern, IU shot 11 for 19 from the free throw line. Obviously, in a close game, if you make a few more of those, you're feeling a lot better. You got to improve from a free throw shooting standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Matt?
My positive was definitely our field goal percentage. I think we shot 55% from the field, and that's been almost a constant thing until tonight. That we've been in the 50s or the high 40s and whatnot. And field goal percentage, and we're just getting shots and we're making it down low. We're taking our opportunities. A lot of that has to do with the strong play of Romeo and Juwan down low. Justin Smith isn't helping that much, but we still have very good field goal percentage even with Justin doing Justin things. And then my negative, I think my negative has to be post defense, and we've seen that we've been having trouble with this. in the couple games that we've had trouble. You look at the Duke game. Obviously, Zion Williamson just got whatever he wanted down low. I look at the Arkansas game, and you saw that their center got anything he wanted down low. You look at this game, Harden got anything he wanted down low, and then you look at the Indiana Penn State game, and we did a little bit better of a job, but Lamar Stevens was still 5 of 13, even though he's 0 of 3 from 3. He was still 5 of 10 from down low, and Mike Watkins was 3 or 4. We're doing a really bad job of doubling in the post. They seem to be very uncomfortable doing it, and it's coming back to bite us. There's a point in which you need to go. All right, I know this is going to get us in foul trouble, but we need to double because we just can't keep putting Juwan Morgan on an island and getting him in trouble because somebody who's bigger and stronger than he is backing him down in the post and nobody's coming in.
Yeah, and that's kind of a debate I bet Archie and the staff are having, Matt, with that last point and doubling versus fouls, because I guess maybe with specifically Northwestern, you might think maybe it's Juwan going against Pardon, that you think Juwan's just going to get the same amount, if not more or slightly less production on the other end of the floor, so maybe you just think they'll cancel each other out, and then the other 4 players on the floor are going to beat Northwestern, so that could be one thought. But yeah, I agree with that comment. And then you mentioned the field goal percentage. So if IU is actually really, really good, at least as of the first 9 games so far in effective field goal percentage and 2-point percentage, they are 12th in the nation for effective field goal percentage at 57.2, and they're 15th in the nation at 2-point percentage, which is 58.3. So on the other end, on the offensive end, they are banging down low. They're getting a lot of good and clean shots. Then I'll go over Nithin's points with free throws. At least tonight, which we're about to get into, our Ken Palm ranking for free throw percentage actually went up like 12 slots just because we shot 78%. So maybe if we can start getting a trend, if we can even get average for free throws, I think everyone's going to be happy for free throw percentage. But on the other end, which is a little interesting, their defense for free throw percentage is 100% the complete opposite. Opponents are shooting 59.4% from the free throw line, which is 8th in the nation. Their opponents are shooting; they're 8th in the nation for their opponents missing free throws, which it is good because, of course, that kept the Penn State game within our grasp tonight, which we're about to talk about. But also, it's kind of bad because you think that's probably going to even out at least a little bit. They're gonna the free throw percentage for the opponents are going to go up even just a little bit. So the Hoosiers need to keep kicking up our own free throw percentage as the opponent free throw percentage is going to keep going. But let's go into the Penn State game that just wrapped up. Just before the show, obviously, the Hoosiers defeated the Penn State Nittany Lions 64-62 for their first Tier A win of the season, which is huge, which we are going to get into. Now, I will preface this. Matt was at a concert beforehand, and so was I. I was performing a concert at the Kennedy Center, too. So we did not get to catch it in action. I got to see the end of the game.
I did.
Oh, okay.
I snuck it in.
All right. So we didn't get to watch the whole thing, but Nathan's going to give us a lot of stuff from this. But all right, Hoosiers get a win. We get a win on the road. Like I said, it's our first Tier A win of the season. But what did you see from this team? Let's just get our overall first knee-jerk reaction right after it happened, Nathan. What's your first knee-jerk reaction?
Sing it to the choir, Matt. A win is a win.
Win is a win, folks.
I mean, I'm not complaining one bit. I love it. I'll get a temporary tattoo of this win if I have to. I mean, that was. I'm on the road.
Temporary tattoo.
Yeah.
I'll get the permanent. Actually, I should watch what I say.
Yeah.
Well, look, not making any bets yet. Maybe later. But all I'm gonna say is on the road. Against the team that IU was at the tip-off an underdog against. I'm not making any excuses. I'm not putting any caveats on this one. Sing it to the choir, Matt. A win is a win.
Win is a win.
All right, so Matt, so some of the stuff that you caught, first initial reaction besides a win is a win, what did you think? What did you take away from this Penn State game?
Rob Finney's immense. What a freshman point guard he is. Oh my goodness. We all knew he was criminally underranked in the recruiting rankings, but that's fine. I'm actually glad he was, because that's just fuel to the fire for him, because he is a gem of a player. In the last 4 minutes, he scored IU's 7 of IU's 10 points. He had the game-winning steal, and I don't understand. He was so important to what he did. And he also tied his career high with 12 points. Thank you, IU's Twitter account, for reminding me. But anyways, other than Rob Finney, a tough shooting night for us tonight, 41% from the field, but 38% from three, and I will take that all day. 38%. If we shoot 38% from three and shoot the 55% like we've been shooting from the 2-point line, we're going to be scary. And we also shot 78% from the free throw line. Romeo was 3 of 3. Rob Finney was 3 of 3. Al Durham was 4 of 6. If I have to point out a negative, Evan Fitzner, the guy that we have here to shoot, did not shoot very well. And then on top of that, he also had a clutch free throw he could have made to, calm my nerves and not make me an emotional wreck for the last 15 seconds of the game, and he misses the one free throw he takes. So he's going to probably have to work on that, and I hope he shoots a couple hundred free throws in practice this week.
Yeah, you mentioned the 3-point percentage, which IU is actually doing pretty good in the 3-point percentage. They're in the top 100 of the league in terms of 3-point percentage. So they don't take a lot, but when they take them, they're smarter shots, and they at least go in a majority of the time. And you mentioned shooting well tonight too. If they average 38.9, they're basically in the top 40, top 45 of the league in terms of three. You can also even might bump that up a little bit, because a lot of the beginning of the year is just playing against mostly bad teams. So that's also going to even out for some people. I was looking at it. I think one team is shooting. Indiana State is shooting 52.3% game, on average. But
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Rob Finney, and that was a guy that I was going to talk about briefly too, because as we just talked about, Juwan Morgan had to go out at the end of the game against Northwestern. Juwan had his 4th foul in the last 3 or 4 minutes. I don't remember the specific time mark where he had to go out because he got his 4th foul. So, of course, how are we going to keep that lead, which, of course, Indiana blew, and they're going to have to learn how to close out games a little better than losing an 11-point lead in the last 3 minutes of the game. But
yes,
Rob was one of those guys that really almost the only guy that was keeping that lead as a lead and wasn't giving Penn State the leg up to actually start winning or tie it, at least to put it into extra time, because the way the game was turning, extra time might not have been too good for the Hoosiers. But as I just mentioned, Rob, with starting to close out the game, especially in that last 2.3 seconds of the game, with basically getting that steal. We had, at least when Penn State was going on their run, the only points scored from the Hoosiers was with Al Durham. And I think Al Durham might be overlooked just a little bit from this game, because he still scored double figures. We had 4 Hoosiers score double figures tonight, which I don't remember the last time we had 4 starters score double figures. And I think he might get overlooked a little bit. But Nathan, what did you see specifically from Al this game that a lot of people might have missed?
Somehow, on a team with Romeo Langford and Juwan Morgan and Evan Fitzner, personally, I feel more comfortable when I see Al Durham take a 3 than I do with any other guy on this team. It's remarkable, considering that last season Durham was a 29% free throw shooter. This year, and I don't know if the numbers have been updated for the Penn State game, but if it does, it's only going to help him. He's up to 45%, and it's a small sample because the season is small, but he's taking a couple 2 to 3 per game. all of a sudden he's turned into this reliable perimeter shooter. And then when you add that to his ability to get to the rim, his ability to rebound because he's a bigger guard, that's really big for that's really, it's making, as you mentioned, sort of an underrated impact to IU's team. Also, I remember a layup that he made late in this game today. He darted from the left side of the floor to the right side of the rim, held off a Penn State defender, and finished with his right hand. It was a big layup in terms of the time and the score of the game. So not only is he making the big picture impact, but he's also delivering in key moments.
Mm-hmm. You have any follow-up, Matt?
Yeah, sure. And this week's segment of stuff you may have missed. Al Durham's defense was fantastic tonight. I thought he played very well. Obviously was an agitator on the defensive end, but he didn't even have a steal. I don't understand how that happened, but it happens. And then also just to talk about Rob Finney some more, another stat you may have missed. 5 assists, 1 turnover. I think Devontae Green could take a note from Rob's book. And then one last stat you may have missed. So you talked about the 4 starters being in double figures. So
I was about to get there.
Romeo with 17.
I was about to get there.
12. Al with 12. How many points did Justin Smith have? As many points as I have. 0. So
I'm going to get into that. That's a great segue. So we've got basically this game, and I think this is also a weird game to like most people should say, you can't judge a team until January, basically. And I definitely think for this team, with the amount of injuries they have, we really haven't seen a consistent consistent play, or at least consistent rotations, consistent minutes, consistent anything from this team yet. And I think tonight is another key another key point to go along with all of that, because Archie was basically leaning on these starters the entire game. Your backups are going to get about 10, 15 minutes or so at minimum, at least, just to give the starters somewhat of a rest. But because Juwan played 26 minutes, Justin 25, Romeo 34, Rob 29, and Al 29. The rest, we only had 5 people play, including Clifton Moore, which is interesting, at least as of recent past. So really we had 4 people play, because Duran only racked up 5 minutes, Evan 17, Cliff 7, Zach 11, and Devontae 17. That's not a lot for the bench minutes. So really he was keying, Archie was keying on this entire starting 5, which is something different. So again, we can't judge this team too much in early December. But the point that I was getting to, like Matt prefaced, you got Juwan, Romeo, Rob, and Al that we've all now talked about at least somewhat. Where they all scored double figures. These are Justin Smith stats for tonight's game, which Archie did leave him in this time, at least longer than he might have during the Arkansas game, where he took him out the entire second half. So he was trying to do something. Now, the one good stat that Justin had, he did lead the team in rebounds. He had 9 rebounds, which is a great stat. You always need rebounds, but 0 for 4 from the field. He did have 3 offensive rebounds, 2 out of those rebounds, so that's something positive. But 0 assists. He did have 1 steal, 3 turnovers, 4 fouls, and like Matt said, laid a goose egg in terms of the points. So Assembly Call had a great episode about what it was almost an entire episode about what's up with Justin this past Thursday. That because like they did, it could be an hour-long episode about Justin so far. But at least in terms of this game, what do you think what was going on, Nathan? What do you think was going on with Justin throughout the game? Do you think he just couldn't get into a rhythm? Do you think it was more mental? What do you specifically think?
All right, so I'm going to maybe do something unpopular here, and I'm going to try to defend Justin Smith a little bit.
All right.
So the good news is that Justin Smith didn't go 0 for 12, right? So he tried to get his shot throughout the game. He only attempted 4. I don't need Justin Smith to score. I'm sorry?
I mean, he was third the way there to 0 for 12. It's okay.
Look, I don't need Justin Smith on this team, especially tonight when Romeo Langford is doing well, Al Durham is hitting a shot, Rob Finney's getting to the rim. I don't need Justin Smith to take 10 shots. What I do need is Justin Smith to rebound the basketball. And not only did he have 9 boards, which led IU tonight, but that was actually the second highest rebounding game that he's had in his career. The other one was against Howard. So this one was on the road against a Big Ten team. I understand that we want Justin Smith to score more than 0 points. But at the end of the day, where I think Justin Smith is the most valuable is in the paint, boxing guys out, bringing rebounds down. And he did that at a level higher than he's done in almost every other game before. And I could argue that the rebounding was a big difference in the game. Also, to Justin Smith's credit, he was able to avoid the 5th foul. He was in foul trouble for a lot of the game. He finished with 4, not a big deal. Now, for those people who look at the 0 points and are wondering, well, what the heck, why couldn't he score more? In this game, what I was a little bit curious about was that Clifton Moore, who recorded all of his production in the first half and looked good doing it, I don't believe he stepped on the floor after halftime. So that to me says one of 2 things. Either, right, like the fans are probably yelling at Justin Smith, like, what the heck, or what the heck's going on? But that kind of tells me that Archie Miller and his staff appreciated what Justin Smith was doing from a rebounding standpoint. He had a steal or 2 as well. He usually seemed to be in the right spots on defense. So I think when it's all said and done, I understand he's got 0 on the board in terms of points. But I thought actually, if I had to give him a grade for this game, I'd actually give him a B.
Not as bad as basically the 0 points, the 3 turnovers, 4 fouls kind of thing that you were looking at. So
I think he's showing improvement, and that's really all we can ask at this point in the season.
Yeah, he's been having a rough couple weeks here. And yeah, you stole my point about the rebounding. I thought the rebounding was going really well, but yeah, I was also disappointed not to see Clifton play a little bit more. He had 4 rebounds, 2 points. I was hoping to see him a little bit more. 3 points. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was about to mention Cliff real quick, but before we wrap up the Penn State portion of it, so if you didn't get to watch it, here's just Cliff's stats. So he played for 7 minutes, and in 7 minutes he went 1 for 1 from field goal. He was 1 for 1 from free throws, which, man, Clifton Moore is 100%. So I love that. 4 rebounds in 7 minutes again, a steal, a block. Yeah, he had 2 turnovers and 2 fouls, but I mean, how much has he played? He's only played garbage time. This was the first time he actually got to get in. He produced when he got in, and that's just looking at the stats, even some of the actual play that he did on the court. So I think we could all take away from that we just want him to keep upping that up. Cliff, if you can just keep getting in the game, even 5 to 10 minutes, just start consistently getting into the game, I think we can finally see what some people wanted to see in terms of NBA recruiting boards that were coming up. So, Cliff, just keep going. So let's have, to wrap up this segment, we'll start with Matt. 1 or 2 takeaways you have from this game, and then how those specific takeaways might go forward into the next couple games, since we do have Louisville and Butler up next.
Get Romeo the ball. You're playing our best basketball when Romeo was touching it the most out of all of our players. We kind of got shied away from that in the second half, and I think that had a lot to do with him getting hit in the face, and then him also probably being really tired. He has a nice break Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before we play on Saturday against Louisville. I hope he gets the ball a lot, because I am sure he's going to be on a personal vendetta against Louisville. As you know, he grew up, very, very close to Louisville and New Albany. And so I'm sure he's going to want to play his best basketball on Saturday. So get Romeo the ball, first off. Second point is please let Juwan rest and get healthy. He obviously tonight looked a little shaky on the court. You could tell he was kind of favoring one leg at certain times, especially when he came down, came down hard on both feet. That one leg that he's having, and has a bone bruise. Obviously, he's it hurts. I can attest, bone bruises suck, especially in your shin. So just get healthy. not much else to take from tonight. Free throw shooting was good. Hopefully it stays around this level for the rest of the year. In the 70s, high 60s, and I'll accept that over, the 40 to 50% free throw nights that we've been seeing recently. But yeah, that's my takeaways from tonight's game. Just get healthy, get Rummy the ball.
All right, Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with those, Matt. For me, the positive is just the general team resilience that IU showed tonight. Again, if you looked at the final score and you saw that IU won by 2, you'll be like, all right, close game, Big Ten, big deal. Well, they started off taking an uppercut to the chin. They went down 9, metaphorically. They went down 9-zip. And they didn't score their first points until 5.5 minutes had already passed in the game. That's game minutes, not real life minutes. 14:30 to go in the first half is when IU scored their first points in this one. So to go to basically spot Penn State, a team that counts as a tier A win, to spot them 9 points. Again, this is a team that beat a top 15 Virginia Tech team last week in Bryce Jordan Center at Penn State. To spot them 9 points and to hang in there, to stick with it, and to find a way to win that game with a banged up Juwan Morgan, with a couple other guys out like Thompson and Jerome Hunter out with injury, it says a lot about this team. And it may not be pretty always, it may not be perfect always, but they've shown some real toughness here. As far as the negative goes, the turnovers still bother me. I mean, they bothered me against Duke, they bothered me against Northwestern, and it continued tonight against Penn State. Especially though, I mean, it's one thing if the defenders are getting in your way and forcing an offensive foul, or they're making a great play to block a shot at the rim, something like. A lot of these are giveaways. And while IU was able to win the game tonight, I think they've got to clean up that facet before they play Louisville on Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Clean up turnovers, 16 turnovers this game, which is, even though it's on the road, still, it's unacceptable. Got to get that into the lower teens. What's that, Matt?
We had 3 at the under 4-minute timeout in the first half. So we had 13 basically in the last 4 minutes of the first half and the second half. That's not good. We were doing fine in the first half. Whatever we were doing for the first 12 minutes of the game, first 16 minutes of the game, let's do that for the next, rest of the season, please. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, it's not to the same extent, just because, of course, I don't want to rehash this game as much, but the Duke game, first half, incredible amount of turnovers, and then the second half it got much better. So I think we've seen a lot of tale of two halves. But to echo what Matt said, I like especially what Matt said, get Rummy the ball, because this game is Louisville on Friday. Because I think in his heart of hearts, in his heart of hearts, he wanted to go to Louisville, so he might want some redemption, at least to look good. Be like, hey, if you didn't do this, this is what you missed out on. Just anything specifically like that. So speaking of which, it's this Saturday. My fault. This Saturday at 2:30 p.m. in Bloomington, and it will be on Fox. So we're on national TV this week. Now that a lot of the football games have been over, or at least until bowl game season, that we're going to start to maybe get some more airtime. But this is a Tier B game, by the way, which so were Marquette and Northwestern. For perspective, away at Arkansas, Duke, and Penn State were all Tier A games. So we're 1 and 2 in those games, which basically you're seeing Power 5 away game. It's going to be a Tier A opponent. Not the best of the best. Home, going to be a Tier B game unless you're playing a top 25 type of team. Butler is a Tier A game and a neutral site. And that's basically it for our tier games, which again, long story short, goes into our tournament selection and everything later down the road. But that's basically it for tier games until we get to conference play. Now, Louisville lost to Tennessee when Tennessee was ranked number 5, which Tennessee, if you haven't heard, is actually good at basketball this year. But Louisville lost to Marquette in Louisville by 3. But they did beat number 9 Michigan State this past weekend by 4. So you kind of see up and down road from Louisville. Current predictions. ESPN gives IU a 69.9% chance to win. Ken Palm, after tonight. So after the updated rankings and everything, Ken Palm has IU ranked at 25th as of Tuesday evening, which they went up one spot after this win, which is interesting. They only went up one spot after a Tier A road win, but they only went up one spot. And of course, that's still better than all the other AP polls and coaches polls, but that's another story. And Louisville right now is 48th as of this evening, but they do have Central Arkansas left to play before the IU matchup tomorrow. Ken Palm also predicts the Hoosiers to win with a score of 78-71 and gives the Hoosiers a 73% chance to win. So about 70% chance to win. Everyone's thinking IU at least has the upper leg just because it's a home game. So let's go around the table and get some opening thoughts on this matchup, and we'll start with Nathan first. What are you looking at from Louisville? What are you looking at for this kind of game? What kind of opponents do Louisville have that might give IU some trouble?
Yeah, first of all, I'm excited that this game is at Assembly Hall. I think if this game was a neutral site game or at Louisville, obviously it would be a lot tougher. By the way, real quick correction, that Louisville lost to Marquette took place on a neutral site. It was at the Barclays Center in New York. So, which actually was kind of good for IU. I mean, because it helped Marquette, and Marquette was on the non-conference schedule as well. But as far as Louisville goes, look, this is a team that is not to be scoffed at. I know they're unranked, but there's a bit of a regional rivalry here. And this is a team that beat Michigan State recently. So, by no means do I expect IU to take these guys lightly. I do not expect IU to go down 9-0 in the first 5 minutes like they did tonight. I would expect some emphasis to be placed on Ryan McMahon. He's a guard who really lit up Michigan State. It's funny, if you look at his game by game, he's got single-digit scoring totals every game this year, except for Michigan State, where he found a way to put 24 points on the board. He's a three-point shooter, so you're going to have to watch out for him. Jordan Nwora is another person IU coaches are going to have to highlight here as they scout Louisville this week. Also, don't ignore Malik Williams. He's an athletic forward who may not be putting up the biggest numbers this year, but he's going to pose a problem inside.
Yeah, and I want to actually give an update. Again, we record these shows live, and all of these stats come in live. So I do have a correction. When I did read it, Indiana was at 25th, but they actually, Ken Palm updated their stuff, and Indiana jumped up to 23. So after the Louisville game as of 10:19 p.m. Eastern time zone, and of course when we get off, it could change to go higher or lower. But right now they're 23rd, so they did jump up a couple spots. They bumped the Hoosiers up to a 74% chance to win for Ken Palm. Still the same score, 78-71. Matt, opening thoughts on this matchup, players to see from Louisville, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, VJ King is a guy to look out for. I don't know what's really up with him at the start of the year, but I was expecting big things from him, or bigger things from him this year. He's a bit of an athlete, and just reminds me of a very stereotypical Rick Pitino guard. So look out for him. Definitely, he could give us problems if he's on his game. Or McMahon, of course, or McMahon, whatever his last name is. Definitely look out for him. He's a 41% three-point shooter. And then Steven Enoch is shooting 75% from three. So there's definitely some people, and Darius Perry is shooting 53% from three. There's definitely some really good shooters on Louisville we're going to have to look out for. They all average, McMahon, Perry, and Enoch all average about 19 minutes per game. So they're going to be on the floor for a good chunk of the game, and we're going to need to be very, very, very quick on our closeouts to make sure that they don't get any easy shots, because they will hit them.
Yep, sure. Now, for time's sake, so we can get you out of here pretty quickly, let's give Matt, then Nathan, predictions for this Saturday.
I'm thinking win. I'm thinking it's going to be another ugly one. I think it's going to be another close one. I think we're going to have to shoot threes. We're going to need about 20 points from Romeo and probably about 14, 15 from Jawan. And I'm going to put it at 73-69. Nice. IU.
All right, Nathan.
I'm on board. I think IU will find a way to win this game against Louisville. I'm looking forward to seeing Juwan Morgan. I think he had a good game last year against Louisville. I think that will continue on Saturday. I expect Evan Fitzner to be kind of surprise a little bit. I think he'll hit a couple shots from outside. I think IU will win. I think it'll be even more low score. I'll go 68-63.
All right. Yeah, I like it. Also, a little bit of probably a little bit of redemption for this Hoosier team for those that were on the court last year. So let's move on to we just got out of the couple that I put during the show. We've just got one more question. I'm going to ask Matt, since Nathan and I were talking about this right before the episode. I want to see. Since we didn't get your thoughts on this, I'm going to get your live reactions to this thought before I give ours. Hoosier Hype on Twitter. Why does IU leave so much uncertainty when it comes to player injuries?
This is just a normal. It's actually a normal thing they do in professional sports, where you don't disclose the injuries just because, one, you want to keep the privacy of the injury, definitely for the player. When it comes to Jerome Hunter, I'm sure with something serious, like you're not going to go and have surgery and, not be around the team for a week. Not something extremely serious and or, health. And, I don't want to say life threatening, but, it was something that would needed to be taken care of immediately. And there's HIPAA laws that have to do with that. And you can't really talk about it unless Jerome wants to talk about it. And he's a freshman in college, and that's just not something he does. But as far as the Race Thompson and the timeline about Race Thompson, you don't want to let your opponent know how to game plan for somebody or how to game plan for you. It's to your advantage to keep them guessing. So if they have to waste time if Penn State has to waste time, looking at high school tapes of Race Thompson to see what he's possibly going to bring to the Hoosiers, that's great. I love that. Because that's wasting their time if he's not going to play. He didn't play tonight, so it was nice. He didn't play. Do I wish he had played tonight? Of course, I wish I had seen Race tonight. I hope he's back on Saturday. But when players are injured and we don't disclose their timetable, it makes teams and it forces other teams to prepare and waste time on those players when they could be doing something else, like spending more time on Romeo Langford. Though I'm sure they spent enough time on Romeo as it was. But you get my point.
Yep. And again, Nathan and I did not talk to Matt before this, and we basically had the exact same thing. So you do see in professional sports, you do see a little more disclosure for injuries and stuff. You do hear more about it, but that's professional sports. They've got a job. You don't hear that more as collegiate sports. I'll get back to you in a second, Matt. Collegiate sports, where these are still students, there are HIPAA laws and everything where you have to, there's literally legal protocols for everything, to where sometimes you can't disclose information, everything like that. We actually haven't technically heard anything about Race yet officially, but I mean, it's at this point, everyone knows it's a concussion. There just hasn't been official statements and everything like that yet. And then to echo what Matt said again, it's also just a strategic thing. Wait till the last minute so the other team is guessing where, when, or who's going to be there and everything, and they can't game plan as easily for that. They have to have multiple game plans, multiple strategies, and they have to take time to make multiple strategies instead of just focusing on one specific thing. But Matt, what was the last thing you had?
Yeah, and the difference between collegiate sports and pro sports, a lot of time you'll see a team release injury information. So I'm trying to think of a high-level player that went down with a season-ending injury. Oh, when J.J. Watt goes down inevitably with his season-ending injury, like he always does, Texans are the one that released that. And you ask yourself, why did the Texans release it when, Matt, you just talked about how, they're going to have to game plan if they don't know he's going to be out. And that's because in professional sports, you have to pay the athletes. You actually have to pay them money. And so if the team releases the information and gets the information out that blah, 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 tore his ACL, when it comes to contract negotiations the next time around, the team can use that against them and go, you have a history of tearing your ACL. And the same thing in basketball. Derrick Rose tears the ACL 3 times. And so that's something that the teams can use against them, that, hey, you're injury prone. In collegiate basketball, that doesn't matter. That's not a thing. There's no contract negotiations. You just have a scholarship. And so schools are going to be there to look out for you. And they don't want to disclose anything that's going to be, detrimental to your career unless they absolutely have to, like it's like a life-threatening injury or it's a season-ending injury. So, like, for instance, last year with Texas guard, get his name right now.
Andrew Jones.
Andrew Jones had cancer and he had to sit out for the season. And Texas disclosed that because it was something they needed to disclose because he's going to be gone for the rest of the year. You need to know that. But if it's something that you can come back from, like maybe Jerome Hunter's injury, something you come back from and it's not life-threatening, they're not going to disclose it because that could hurt his future if it's something having to do with like muscle in the leg. So there's a little bit of give and take in collegiate sport compared to professional sport.
And real quick, sometimes they also don't know. Sometimes they don't know for a while. Like I think Jerome Hunter, they actually didn't know for a long time. And even if they do now, they shouldn't say anything. But also in terms of the professional sports, you talked about injuries, season-ending injuries. They can go on injury reserve, and that's roster spots that they can get someone else onto the team to get another roster spot instead of just having that injured player eat up space. So that's also another point in the pros versus college concern. Whereas, of course, college, you got your spot. You get to stay there until you leave. But that about wraps it up for our 65th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. I will be back this Friday for another edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. Make sure to stay tuned through updates on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound. Subscribe to us on YouTube or however you listen to podcasts, and visit our website at thehoosiersound.com to find all of our information in one place. As always, send us your questions as the audience. So be sure to comment, chat, or send us a message at admin@indianahq.com on what questions you have, and we'll get them on our next episode. Lastly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.